Welcome, everyone. Today we have in studio with us Dr. Jack Wolfson. He's the author of The Paleo-Cardiologist. He's a board-certified cardiologist, and he has some great knowledge to share with you about holistic health and busting the myths of conventional cardiology. He joins us in studio here in Austin, Texas. Thank you, Dr. Wolfson, for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Mike, and so excited to share the message of health and wellness and teach people that there's a better way to heart health. And you're not going to hear this from your typical cardiologist, the information I'm going to share today. So it's great to be on with you.
Let's get right to it then. And I know you're going to offer a lot of solutions, but let's start out with some big bang concepts here. Where is conventional cardiology completely wrong, rooted in myths, giving patients disinformation that might even be harming them? Where are they wrong?
Well, essentially, for prevention, the cardiologists have nothing. We're not trained in prevention. I went through 4 years of medical school, 3 years of internal medicine, 3 years of cardiology, years on the job, and it's never about prevention. So their idea of statin drugs, of taking an aspirin, of nuclear stress tests, that, they're all in the kind of early diagnosis and putting a Band-Aid on. What you and I like to talk about is really how we prevent disease, and that's with good nutrition, avoiding environmental toxins, getting sleep, sunshine, physical activity, but they never teach us that stuff, and that's where conventional cardiology is killing millions of people because they're giving people the wrong information. And to me, that's leading to their early death. And that's what I'm here to expose.
So you're saying that many heart attacks and cardiological fatal events could be prevented if people just had better information? That's a pretty strong claim, a pretty strong indictment of conventional cardiology.
I can make those claims because I've been there and I've done that, right? I did it for 10 years and 16 years in total working in the hospitals. I saw all of their faults. I'm the ultimate insider who saw it all, and I saw how ineffective it is. I saw the thousands and thousands of heart attacks and heart failure patients and stroke victims, cancer patients. I saw all that. I saw their failures. So if I can sit here with my credentials and really call out those cardiologists for what they are, and they're really just glorified pill pushers, calling them for what they are, but I want to tell the world that there's a better way and we can save millions of lives.
So you're not getting kickbacks from the statin drug manufacturers to push their pills like every other cardiologist in the country?
I am definitely not sponsored by any pharmaceutical company. In fact, when I get up and I speak in front of groups of people and different conventions and different societies, and I'm telling these people, that's one of my early disclaimers, is to say, I'm not sponsored by any pharmaceutical company, as most of the other speakers are, of course, in the cardiology space. And my father was a cardiologist, and he received lots of money from Big Pharma. We used to take trips all around the world. We took a full family vacation for 10 days to Hawaii, and it was on pharmaceutical dime, and we ate, and we golfed, and we relaxed in the spa. We did all these things, and airfare, everything was all paid for.
That's fascinating that you got to experience as a child, I would guess, some of the luxury lifestyle that doctors get from drug companies, essentially bribing them, paying for these vacations. And I've seen that as well. And yet, for some reason, you rejected it. Why? Why is that? I mean, wouldn't it be easier to just go with the flow, do what the American Heart Association recommends, take the money, take the vacations, push pills to the patients? No one would attack you, you'd be fine. Why not go for that?
Well, I think there's a lot of there's a lot of doctors that are really staying in that space. They understand what you have on naturalnews.com. They understand what I'm doing. They understand my book, but they don't want to listen to it because I've had cardiologists that have called me and said, we love your book. We love your message. We love everything that you're doing. Just don't ever mention my name regarding that. Because you're right, it's a money factory. They are making millions of dollars, whether it's from big pharma or it's from insurance money and including Medicare dollars, that is just a never-ending cash supply for these cardiologists. And if they stay focused and programmed into what they're doing, they can make a very nice income drive nice cars, live in a nice house, wear nice clothes, all those things. And if you think about breaking out of that mold, you're risking it all. And for those people that have a couple $100,000 plus in debt from medical school, it's hard to say, wow, that was all wrong. That medical paradigm is wrong. It's the sick model. I'm going to go find the wellness model. Well, now you got to come up with a way to pay your bills. And for a lot of cardiologists, they're just not going to do it.
So in essence, you admit that you could be a lot wealthier probably. I don't know your financial situation, it's none of my business, but you could probably earn millions of dollars a year if you would go in and push the pills and get the money for giving the speeches paid by Big Pharma. And just go with the flow. You could make a lot more money, I would imagine, right?
No doubt, no doubt. And it's easy money. It's guaranteed money. So now I open up a holistic cardiology practice in Arizona.
What's the website for that practice?
thedoctorswolfson.com, THEDRS Wolfson.com. So if people, I opened up that practice and it was a lot different. Now you become a business person because, right, you're managing employees, you're doing all these things, and you rely on new patients coming in for income. When you're in the old cardiology model, of which I was a senior partner in the largest group in Arizona, it's just every month you get that big, fat paycheck into your account, and you never have to worry. All you have to do is see patients. You don't have to worry about the billing. Everything's handled for you. You just go in there, you see patients, you submit your charges for that patient, and next thing you know, you got, a seven-figure income coming in, and most cardiologists are not going to do anything different. They're plugged in that model, and they're not willing to hear this other message.
Well, I want to ask you more about your personal background in a little bit. To those watching this is an interview with Dr. Jack Wolfson. He's the author of this book, The Paleo Cardiologist, and he's got a practice in Phoenix, Arizona. What part of Phoenix really is it?
The office is in Paradise Valley. So if you know the Phoenix area, right, it's Paradise Valley, Scottsdale, Phoenix. It's all kind of tied in there. We're about 20 minutes away from the airport, and about 50% of my patients come from out of state because when you're a holistic cardiologist and you know what I know and talk the way I talk and live the way I talk, you get people coming from all over the world, and there's not much in the way of competition. So there's not many people, unfortunately, that you can go to in your local area. So if you want the best, I tell people to come out to Arizona.
You look really healthy yourself, by the way. In person, you're healthy, you're energetic, you have good posture and everything. So if people can't see that on camera, I'm saying it.
Well, thank you, Mike. My wife is a doctor of chiropractic. So I get adjusted from her, I get adjusted from other chiropractors. I really feel that the doctor of chiropractic is uniquely positioned to be the primary care provider, the go-to person for all things health and wellness. Because if you go to see your garden variety MD, you're just going to get antibiotics, you're going to get pain pills, you're going to get Band-Aid cover-up approach. When you go to see a doctor of chiropractic, you're going to get adjusted, you're going to get the message of health and wellness, and I think if you follow that, you're going to do extremely well. So, and listen, I mean, we talk the talk and walk the walk, and we all have to do that, and that's how we're going to make the world a better place.
I completely agree. I know several chiropractors, and we talk nutrition, and we talk lab tests and so on. They know more about nutrition than a typical MD.
For sure. I mean, we got zero nutrition training in medical school.
Yeah.
Residency, fellowship, we only talked about pills. We only talked about procedures, stress tests, cardiac ultrasounds, MRI, CT scans, angiograms. That's what we talked about. We never really had any interest. And what's scary is that I've got 300 references in my book to back up what I say. So I've got all these MDs and PhDs that wrote the original literature, and I quote them in my book. But when we go through this in training, we never really discuss these issues. We never discuss, heavy metal toxicity and cardiovascular disease, boring. We never talk about, here's an article about leaky gut and heart disease. Who cares about that? We don't talk about those things. And the chiropractor, yeah, they get a lot of that training. Now, not every chiropractor is perfect, not just like every MD is not. So you do have to, seek out the best, and really, you also go interview people. Mike, you come to see me as a doctor. You like me, we work together. You don't like me, you go find somebody else. But at least you're shopping around, and that's the beautiful thing about the internet and about websites like yours, is that you can go there for all of this health information. You don't rely on your doctor like it's the 1970s. Well, you've got this complaint, take this antibiotics and some aspirin, we'll see you later. And now you have, wait a second, you're telling me that I can take, oregano oil, or I can take berberine, or I can take some herbal remedy, garlic, or whatever it may be, and it works just as well, and no toxicity. It's exciting.
Isn't it, though, something about, the mindset of the American consumer? They've been taught by the medical system to dissociate what they eat with the health outcomes that they experience. And so they go to a doctor, a typical cardiologist, let's say, and that cardiologist usually will never tell them, don't eat trans fats, don't eat fried foods, stop doing these things. They'll just say, here, take this pill, continue your lifestyle, that heart disease is a random, spontaneous event, you have no control. That's nonsense, right? I mean, I would imagine that at your clinic, you must empower patients with self-determination over their health outcomes, right?
Oh, certainly. I do an hour and 15-minute initial consultation. We talk a lot about nutrition and lifestyle, and of course I take the whole history and physical examination and EKG and all that stuff. And then we've got health coaches that are in our practice. We've got a nurse practitioner, with us to really give the person the whole spectrum of health and wellness. And we order the most advanced lab testing in the world. The typical cardiology visit's a 10-minute office visit. What are you going to teach someone about their lifestyle in 10 minutes? You're not going to. And it's very sad. It's very sad for the cardiologist because they're having such little benefit and actually causing harm because they're not giving the patients the information. And
the way you practice medicine, I think, that's the way medicine has been practiced in the past before Big Pharma took over everything. But I also think it's the only future of real medicine involving human doctors. Because you see, I think mainstream cardiologists are going to be replaced by robots. Because what do they do that's not robotic?
Yes.
A robot can diagnose, an AI system, just a glorified vending machine.
Yes.
They can diagnose and write a prescription and push pills. So they're going to be obsolete. It's the human side that you bring in, the behavioral training, the awareness increase among patients, that consciousness of what they're doing. That's the only future of human doctors in medicine, I think.
I would certainly agree with you. I think that the way things are going with with robotics and robotic surgeries, in a lot of ways, I totally agree with you. I mean, listen, if you can have a self-driving vehicle that can drive you around the city and park and do all those things, why can't you do it from a cardiology standpoint, inserting pacemakers, open heart surgeries? It's very tech driven. And not very a lot of thought amongst the doctors. It's very rote memory and rote programming regarding here's the pills you need to take, here's the procedure we need to do, and it's all worthless. It's all worthless.
Right. It's like we do these tests, and then these numbers equal these pills, and that's it. You don't need a human doctor to do that.
In a lot of ways, cardiologists don't even think you need to do the tests anymore as far as cholesterol or markers of inflammation. They just assume everybody needs to be on a statin drug. They literally think that they should put statin drugs in the drinking water. And I was with them on those conversations. And as you know, Mike, they already put fluoride in the drinking water. Would it be such a difficult leap for them to put Lipitor or aspirin or any of these pharmaceuticals as a protective thing for society?
Right.
They'll do it.
All right, let's shift gears. Let's talk about cost, long-term cost to this country, because there's a huge debate in Washington, D.C. right now, of course. Obamacare is being repealed, peeled back, being replaced by other kinds of systems. There are other approaches. I've said on the record, and I want to get your reaction to this and your opinion, that you can't solve the health cost problem just by changing who pays for the disease. You have to show people how to get healthy and how to prevent disease. Where are we actually headed in our country if we don't change the system and if we just keep relying on a pharmaceutical pill-popping approach? I mean, Can this country even afford that model for very much longer?
No, it definitely can't. The national debt, where it is, and the budget deficits and all these things, all the money that's being spent on the sick care, that's just not sustainable. Think about the new class of cardiology drugs. They're called PCSK9 inhibitors. They're for cholesterol reduction. And they dramatically work, and they're $15,000 a year. Who's going to pay for that? And then a study comes out in the spring of 2017 in the New England Journal of Medicine, one of the biggest journals in the world, saying the drug doesn't save lives. So who's going to pay $15,000 a year for a drug that doesn't save lives? Yet it's estimated it is a $250 billion a year industry. Who's going to come up with the $250 billion for a drug that doesn't save lives? But if the government is dictated to by pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies, and everybody's in bed together, I mean, it can only come from the taxpayer, is who's going to pay that. To me personally, if you ask my opinion of where healthcare should go, I think it's cash. I think it's a cash model, that you scrap insurance, maybe have a catastrophic plan, but make it just like you're shopping for a doctor like you'd shop for a car or a bicycle or a house. You find someone and you say, what are your fees? And I say, my fee is $100. And you say, well, the guy down the street's $50. Okay, well then go see the guy down the street, or pay me because I'm better, or let's negotiate. This is how it should be. And then I think when people actually have their own dollars at risk, there's accountability. They start to take care of themselves. They're like, wait a second, I don't want to wind up in the hospital with a heart attack and a $10,000 bill. How can I prevent it? Right. Well, wait a second, the drugs don't work. Let's talk about nutrition. Let's talk about sleep and physical activity and getting adjusted and getting sunshine. There's a much better way. That I think that's the only. Now, this may be a pipe dream in the sky for this to happen, but I think, and that's just how it was in the old days, right? You came to see me and you said, "Hey, listen, I've got this lump on the back of my neck here. What should I do about it?" And I'm like, "Well, okay, what do you got to pay me with?" And you say, "Well, I got this chicken here. Take this whole chicken," right? And that was our transaction. That's how it worked for thousands of years, and I think that's the way.
Yeah, we have the problem of the third-party payer system now. The patient isn't aware of the cost of treatment. They have no idea usually because it's billed to somebody else, the government or a private insurance company. So the patients don't price shop, and they don't look for doctors that get results. They just want coverage, whatever that means. In the minds of most Americans, coverage just means somebody else pays for my health problem. And of course, there's 80% waste and inefficiency and incompetence throughout that system. There are entire careers in America today where people just sit around and all they do is code medical classes for reimbursement, right? That's a career now, which is insane.
Yeah, there's so much waste and inefficiency in that system. I mean, obviously, I came from the big practice, and there were about 40 providers, and there may have been another few hundred employees on top of the doctors. And yeah, and half of that was people trying to bill the insurance companies and recoup the money from the insurance companies. It is all a very strategic, system. Totally money-driven, totally financially driven. And that's why doctors are in such a rush to see as many patients as possible and try and collect as many checks, as possible. And it's horrible. It's a horrible, horrible system. And it's the patients that are suffering. And yeah, there's just no way this model's sustainable. And we realize that now.
There's even, by the way, there's a hybrid approach that I covered a few years ago on National News, which is a voucher system, where let's say the poorest Americans, instead of them having to pay out of pocket, it's kind of a semi-socialized medicine but patient choice system, where the government would give them vouchers, kind of like food stamps but medical debit cards, but then the patient has to shop around. And how do they spend their $300 a month or whatever they get in a voucher? How do they spend that wisely? And what if that were opened up to chiropractic care or holistic medicine, herbalists, and so on? Then there'd be competition. Oh my God, what an idea, competition. And then, doctors, conventional doctors would have to actually start producing results for lower costs.
Yeah, they'll fade away very quickly, the typical pill pusher, because they're not successful. Patients feel worse. They're not getting good outcomes. And when you go into the holistic space, you meet all these different people that are 50, 60, 70, 80 years of age that take no pharmaceuticals. And then someone else who's plugged into the medical system, they're on 10 drugs. Clearly there's a difference in the way that people are living and the outcomes they're getting. And when you step outside of that model and you go into the holistic side, you just see such amazing results where people feel great and people are miserable on the other side, and it's broken.
It's interesting you say that, because the conventional view is that drugs are the only thing that works, and that all holistic medicine is hogwash according to, the status quo. But yet what you're seeing in your practice, and I imagine you probably see maybe thousands of patients a year, something like that, you're seeing exactly the opposite. Isn't that fascinating?
It's fascinating, it's enlightening, it's very empowering for me as a cardiologist, because once again, I saw the other side. I saw the sickness, I saw the pharmaceuticals that don't work. And then you open up a book and you actually see that, wait a second, that vitamins work, minerals work, things like blood pressure. It's not from a deficiency in blood pressure drugs. It's actually from a deficiency in what the body needs. So if you take things for blood pressure like beetroot powder, like L-arginine, citrulline, taurine. If you eat lots of spices, rosemary, thyme, oregano, those are where pharmaceuticals came from. You can do so much with food. The power of the sun to control blood pressure, to give you energy, to make you feel better, make your mood better, to embrace that sunshine, and how sun actually reduces cancer risk. Why wouldn't it? Because we've been in it for millions of years. The power of sleep, physical activity, getting outside and gardening and walking, and there's so many different things that we can do. We just don't need the pills. And as I say about the statin drugs, if I say that the statins are killing millions of people, it's because statins, according to their data, reduce your risk from here to here, according to their data. But what we want to do with our informational sources is reduce your risk down to zero. And we know they're failing. They can't do that. So if they don't provide the information necessary to get you down to zero risk, then I think you're killing millions of people. That's why I make that statement.
And there are also, of course, very devastating side effects associated with statin drugs that, afflict maybe tens of millions of people. And what we often find with the pharmaceutical industry is that they will highlight some very, very minor statistical improvement of a single biomarker, such as LDL cholesterol or whatever, but then they'll ignore this huge swath of all of these toxic side effects that increase risk of death. We've seen this time and time again. Drugs like Resolin, a diabetes drug that got pulled off the market after destroying the livers of, 100,000 patients and so on. It's just again and again. So it's like they're saying, it's almost they're doing a stage magic shell game, distraction. Like, look at the rabbit coming out of the hat here, but don't pay attention to this massive fire burning backstage, which is the health of the American population in decline.
Yeah, I totally agree. When it comes to, the statin drugs, and some of these other drugs that have, they all have side effects, right? The drug is just a chemical, and it goes into the body, and it doesn't know what it's supposed to do. It just goes into the body and does stuff. And when you take a statin drug, you're interfering with the production of cholesterol, but you're also interfering with the production of CoQ10. You're interfering with the production of something called dolichol. Dolichol is another steroid-like hormone similar to cholesterol, and it's highly concentrated in the brain. So all these patients with Parkinson's disease, people with Parkinson's-like or movement disorders that are on statin drugs, they need to really take a look at that. These drugs all have effects, and as you said, there are literally dozens of drugs that have been pulled by the FDA as dangerous after they were approved by the FDA as safe.
Right.
So, whether it's Resolin or Posicor or, so many of these other drugs, different antibiotics, that have been used. I mean, these are dangerous, toxic things. Heck, there's one cardiology drug where you have to be monitored in the hospital for 3 days while you're put on it. And then if you don't die, then you're safe to go outside the hospital
Wow.
with it. So and maybe that person, all they needed was magnesium or potassium or omega-3 fish oil, or remove gluten from their diet, or get more sunshine, or get adjusted, or get more sleep, back off caffeine. There's so many different things that should be addressed before we reach for any dangerous pharmaceutical?
That's a good question for you. What have you actually seen yourself in your clinic when people start taking those low-cost, simple, natural supplements like magnesium, you mentioned omega-3 oils, I mean just those two alone, or maybe supplemental CoQ10 for example. What kinds of results have you seen?
The results are tremendous. Nobody feels better when you put them on a blood pressure drug. Nobody says, wow, I feel great now that my blood pressure went from 150 down to 130. Nobody says they feel better on a statin drug. Nobody says they feel better on most of these pharmaceuticals. But yet when you plug them into the natural stuff, when you talk about the diet and lifestyle type things and you use evidence-based supplements, when you use these things, you get tremendous results and people feel great. They're losing weight. They're getting their energy back. We affectionately call our beetroot powder, it's a product called Heartbeat, but its nickname is the boner juice. People feel good when you give them the boner juice. They're not, erectile dysfunction is not a deficiency in Viagra, the little blue pill. It's a deficiency in things that make nitric oxide, such as beets. So give the person beets, let them do it naturally, and they get great results without the side effects.
One of the chemical constituents in that is what's called betaine, or how do you pronounce it?
Well, there's betaine that's in there that does tremendous as far as mental well-being, the processing of neurotransmitters. There's something else in there called, and also betaine can be useful for digestion, methylation, so many different things. There's another thing in there that they named betalains. And betalains are natural COX-2 inhibitors. They're like natural ibuprofen, like natural aspirins. And fundamentally, you're giving the body, again, what it needs. It's deficient in those nutrients. It's not deficient in the pharmaceuticals, of course.
Because our bodies, our ancestry and the history of humans, of the human species, I mean, we co-evolved with a world of food, not a world of isolated pharmacological chemicals. I mean, there's no natural biocompatibility with Big Pharma's chemicals. I mean, that's a basic scientific concept right there.
We've evolved on this planet for millions and millions of years. Our genetics are perfect. They're perfect because that's just survival of the fittest. That's how we got here. So you and I are able to have this conversation as we have right now. We can see each other and we can hear and smell and taste and feel and all the things, run and jump and bike and all the things we can do. Where do pharmaceuticals fit into that miracle of how we got here? Like you said, it's about the food. It's about living that lifestyle, what I call the paleo lifestyle. If we can live the lifestyle as much as we can in the 21st century, live that lifestyle of our ancestors, we'll do tremendous. We'll do absolutely tremendous. And pharmaceuticals don't fit in that model. Pharmaceuticals, and of course the procedures, have a role in emergency situations.
Sure.
But when it comes to prevention, once again, the medical doctors have nothing.
So last question for you on this segment here. How can people find out about your clinic if they want to come to you as a patient, let's say? Or do you offer consulting, phone consulting? How can people benefit from your knowledge?
Well, for one thing, they can go to our website, thedoctorswolfson.com, and we've got a lot of information on there. The book, of course, is a tremendous resource because the book is over 200 pages, sourced with information, and just really about living the whole health and wellness lifestyle. And it's not just about heart health, because when you follow the plan that you and I talk about with the food and the lifestyle, you can prevent anything. You can prevent cancer, you can prevent diabetes, you can prevent thyroid disorders, brain disorders, heart disorders, whatever the medical community wants to label it as, we can prevent it by eating the right foods, living the right life, and that information is in my book as well.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Dr. Wolfson.
Thank
It's
you.
been a lot of fun. Support our films for humanity. Visit healthrangerstore.com. The cleanest lab-verified health products in the world.